Today we're going to be talking about a case that's recently been brought back to life by a Netflix documentary that's as disturbing as it is shocking. Taylor Parker portrayed herself as a friend that was invested rather than a jealous woman using you as part of her secret plot. She let people believe and feel sorry for her whilst looking you in the eyes and lying. Because anyone that knew Taylor Parker around the time of lockdown will have known her as a pregnant mother, excited to start the journey that would begin upon her giving birth. But anyone who knew her before the time of lockdown would know that that wasn't possible. Taylor Parker couldn't have children, but that wouldn't stop her from carrying out a crime so shocking that you would have said it was far-fetched if you witnessed it in a horror movie. But this was no movie, this was not fiction, and the nightmare of what had just happened was just beginning. Today we're going to be talking about a family blown apart by her presence, another family that would never be the same after her actions, and a woman so desperate for attention and gratification that she would betray every single person in her life in the worst possible way in order to get it. This is the dark and twisted story of Taylor Parker.
Right, before we get into this episode, I just want to say that this is one of the darkest and most disturbing stories that we have covered on Joey and Josh. And that's because it involves murder in the most cold-blooded and pre-planned way imaginable. And before we start, we just want to send our regards to the friends and family of the victim, who we've seen firsthand in Netflix documentary Maternal Instinct. So yeah, just remember, before we crack on, we will be discussing that murder itself.
And just quickly there, you mentioned the documentary. Now, I promised you that you would be shocked at this documentary. We're not going to give it away right yet, but did you see a twist as sharp as that one coming?
This is the thing. I have watched plenty of Netflix documentaries in my time, and I've learned a lot in reviewing the cases that we do on Joey and Josh, and I could not believe this story. It is so shocking, so dark, so evil. You will not believe it if you haven't yet watched the documentary. But if you haven't watched it, don't worry, because we're going to tell you the full story before we also tell you what Netflix didn't show you in the documentary.
That's the really interesting thing for me here, because you said, we're going to tell them everything and we couldn't believe what had happened in there. But one of the things that you yourself told me that you couldn't believe was the amount of details that you feel could have contributed towards that story that Netflix actually left out. So definitely stick around if you want to hear about those gruesome details. But before we get into any of those surrounding Taylor Parker, I want to start by talking about a woman named Reagan Simmons-Hancock. So Reagan was a happy, enthusiastic and vibrant character who everyone spoke well of. She had married her husband, Homer Hancock, in 2019, and by early 2020, the pair announced that they would be having a baby, news which was welcomed by all of those around them. The pair had actually been dating for over 5 years. Homer was a father figure to Reagan's daughter that she already had from a prior relationship, Kinley, and everyone spoke well in terms of their relationship. In terms of the dynamic between the pair, they were very loving. And as I say, they get married in 2019, but one of the problems when planning the wedding is their photographer falls out, and therefore Reagan has a look online. She contacts a more budget-friendly option, and that's when she meets Taylor Parker. Taylor becomes the wedding photographer, but she very much becomes a centerfold of the wedding. She's in selfies with the bridesmaids. She's very much getting herself entwined into the wedding. And it actually happens that with Reagan's pregnancy, Taylor Parker is more or less in sync. She's currently pregnant herself, basically, or at least that's the story she tells to Reagan. And due to that, herself and Reagan actually end up becoming incredibly close. They end up bonding over their shared experience and sharing the journey together. On October the 7th, they have a girls' day out together where they buy stuff in preparation for the births of their children. But just days later, on October the 9th, when no one hears from Reagan and her daughter doesn't turn up to school that day, the family are obviously concerned. As their calls continue to go unanswered, they grow increasingly worried, and ultimately, Reagan's mother would be shocked at the discovery of her own daughter lying in a pool of her blood inside of her house. But please brace yourself right now, because what I'm about to tell you will get a lot more brutal and a lot more graphic. So I've given you ample time. But upon discovery, officers realize that there is no baby in that building with Reagan, and therefore quickly come to the conclusion that someone has deliberately taken that baby, snatched from the womb of its mother. I told you before the video started that even if you put this in a horror movie, it would sound far-fetched. And within just hours of that disgusting and horrendous crime, an arrest is made. An arrest that would shock Reagan's family when they found out that it was Taylor Parker. Now, Taylor's someone that the family think of well, someone that has shown them a lot of kindness over the past few months, and therefore someone that they never felt that they needed to worry about. But as soon as you scratch beneath the surface, you start to realize that Taylor Parker has a lot of skeletons in her closet.
Well, you say that, Joey, but that wasn't the first impression that Wade Griffin had about Taylor, because he thought that she was a very lovely young lady. And you might be asking, who's Wade Griffin? Who's Taylor? Well, let me explain. Well, we've got to go back to the night of the 25th of July, 2019. There was a big rodeo that was going on in Naples in Texas, and these two met each other. Basically, Taylor was working in the rodeo and he catches the eye of a young lady from the crowd, and that ended up being Taylor. Wade had never met her before, which makes her advances on him straight away seem a little bit strange. But basically, she asked him if he's single and suggested that they hang out. Now, what's clear is that Wade was absolutely interested in Taylor, even if in the documentary he tries to play this down. And in fact, he even said in the documentary that he saw no problem with sort of taking her out for a drink. He wouldn't cause anyone harm. What's clear is that he really enjoyed this attention and the awareness of Taylor, and he was very much looking forward to taking her out for a meal.
I'm guessing then you shared that same sort of view on Wade in the documentary, which was very much so as if he wasn't that interested and he was never captivated by her. He even says in the documentary that he never loved her, didn't he? However, his actions don't really reflect someone that isn't captivated by someone and isn't engrossed in their lie. Look,
hindsight is 2020. What I would say is if we were doing an interview around 2019 or the start of 2020, we might have heard something very different from Wade. I think he was incredibly chuffed with me and Taylor. They obviously got on straight away and their relationship blossomed very, very quickly indeed. But before I tell you about that, what I will just say is that when he first meets Taylor, he doesn't really know anything about Taylor herself. They've literally just met. So any first date is kind of the same, isn't it? Like, you don't really know someone's background. You don't really know how they grew up. You definitely don't know anything about their family. And let's be honest, you don't really know about the person. And I think that's very key to remember in this case. But yeah, as I say, their first date quickly escalated and the couple obviously bonded about country living and country lifestyle and looking after livestock and enjoying being out in the open air and that sort of thing. And they very much got on from that point. Wade loved the fact that Taylor basically mucked in and did whatever he asked. She was out feeding pigs. She was looking after horses and cows. She was cooking him meals. It was pretty much a country lad's dream. And she quickly quickly became that sort of stereotypical homemaker. She moved into Wade's place within a month of them first meeting. And I'll tell you one thing that definitely helps a relationship go at a little bit quicker pace. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's money. And that's because Taylor, in this relationship, makes a confession to Wade. She says that her family are basically oil and gas barons. They've acquired an incredible amount of natural resources and therefore an incredible amount of cash. And as you might expect in people in these situations, they would go, oh, I've come across a bit of cash. I've got some inheritance coming my way. They might not necessarily tell you an exact number, but that wasn't what Taylor did. She told Wade the number and she said that I've got $8 million coming my way. But she didn't just leave it at Wade. She also told all of Wade's family that exact number. She wasn't subtle about this. In fact, she was very proud of the inheritance coming her way. And therefore, their lifestyle changed very quickly indeed. Taylor starts to be very, very generous. She says to Wade that they need to find a proper place, somewhere that Wade has always dreamt of living. And together, they find a place called Pecan Point. It's 1,500 acres of land and is listed for $4.7 million. Taylor's so delighted with this possibility that she actually creates a presentation and delivers it to Wade's family, telling them all about how amazing this place was going to be. Which, to be honest, Joey, I find a little bit insensitive, don't you? Like, basically someone coming into your house, sitting you down around a TV and basically giving you a presentation about how much money they're going to come into, when all of the people that she's doing the presentation to are manual workers. They're grafting, they're trying to do the best they can to have a good life for their family. And she's lording it up going, we've got all of this money.
Let's be honest, it's fucking weird, mate. Yeah. Like, she's not sitting the family down and persuading investors to invest into a business or something like that, other than to solidify her lie and make her feel like she's got more of a stronghold in terms of her position in the family. There's not really any real reason to do that. So apart from the fact that it wouldn't be within someone's character to do that because it's just cringe, also there's no real reason for it. It's weird.
No, it is really weird. And then there was a contentious part of this because in the documentary, it didn't clearly stipulate who was buying the next part for who, but they were also talking about vehicles, and various different vehicles were purchased. A truck for Wade, what they call a sidecar or something like that, basically like a golf cart pretty much that looks after like moving around the farm. Oh. Yeah, exactly that. And then also cars for different family members as well. That was all being purchased from Wade and Taylor. Now, the controversial part of that is that I think Wade was putting a lot of those initial down payments down and Taylor actually wasn't like purchasing the cars for the family.
How long do you think, and I know that context changes everything, if you had a kid on the way, it'd probably be different and whatnot. How long do you think you'd need to be with someone before you accept a gift off them? You personally?
I think it depends on the personality of the person. If they're a very generous person, really enjoyed giving people's gifts, maybe quite early, to be honest with you. But it would depend on the person, wouldn't it? Like if you knew someone got joy, there's a lot of people out there, right? There's a lot of people that buy gifts for people because they actually really enjoy seeing the other person happy. So it would depend on that.
If you as a single man and you started meeting a girl and she bought you a car within the first 2 months, I'd be warning you.
I would find it a bit strange.
I would be warning.
I agree.
Friend.
I agree. But then this is what I mean though, mate. It's very controversial about who bought the cars for who, because I have a feeling, I think Wade was putting a lot of those down payments down. I don't think Taylor was actually putting any cash to it.
Funnily enough, if you thought there was 8 million coming in, you probably wouldn't mind putting a couple of down payments down.
You wouldn't. Now, all of this life change wasn't enough for Taylor. Something huge was about to happen, and it was around a big announcement that she was about to make, because not only did they have a huge mansion, a huge amount of land coming the way, not only did they have all of these cars, but Taylor announced that she was pregnant.
Yeah, now this definitely wasn't one of the things that the documentary left out, but it was definitely an area that I feel could have been explored a little bit more, and I understand that there's exploitation, you don't want to do it, but do you not think that the documentary could have done a little bit of a better job of letting the viewer know that this woman is already a mother. She's already had multiple kids.
This is it. And again, I want to get fully into that and I want to explain this, but you're totally right. I feel like they brushed over this a little bit and they said, yeah, her 2 kids were at a baby shower. And we were a bit like, I remember I was watching it, I was going, 2 kids, like what's this about? And the question that came to my mind immediately is, we've watched Wade and Taylor's budding relationship, and I saw them as young couple. I saw them building a life together, and I thought, okay, that kind of makes sense. The next step, if they were going to go for it, marriage, kids, etc. But what I didn't realize is that she'd had this previous relationship with, by the way, 2 different baby daddies, and that she'd had children from a very young age. In fact, the first child that she had was when she was only 17. Now, again, we come back to the point now where we're seeing a baby shower, and this was for Wade. And this is where they come in and they bring a young calf, and the young calf is indicating with a ribbon around its neck what gender this child was going to be. But there's a huge amount of context to this that we have to give right now. Right, before we get into that, the World Cup is on and we are enjoying it right now. And I know that this man over here is enjoying it quite a lot because you are staying up very late. Look how tired you look.
I'm almost nocturnal.
Yeah, you are. You've been staying up late at night. And what do you need to stay up late at night? Sometimes a little energy boost?
Little energy drink.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good one. I'll put a pin on that because I also need some hydration, because I don't know about you guys, but I've been sweating in bed recently.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just from the heat and the World Cup.
Yeah.
And that's why we are delighted to work with Holy, because they provide some of the most tasty drinks imaginable. And we know so many of you have enjoyed Holy drinks in the past that we are delighted to tell you about the Starter Set Deluxe, because that is the place to go if you're just discovering what Holy is. Because in the Starter Set Deluxe, you get loads of different sachets from energy, hydration, and iced tea ranges. So you know you can find your favorites before picking up one of the beautiful big tubs that Holy sell. And I've become obsessed with the iced tea, because all you need to do is chuck 1 sachet into 500 milliliters of cold water, give it a shake, and you are sorted. For me, the acai and hibiscus is still my favorite flavor.
I'm more of an energy drink man, to be honest. Apple Alligator is still my number 1. It's got no sugar, no aspartame, and no taurine. And it uses Nucaf, which releases caffeine gradually over 4 hours. The biggest surprise for me was how good the flavors actually taste. We've been having them for so long that now I'm just going whether I need the energy or not, because I like the taste.
So if you need a drink that's going to quench your thirst in this ridiculous heat that we're experiencing right now, then check out Holy and the Starter Set Deluxe using the link in the description below. And if you use the code that's on screen right now, which is Joey Josh, you'll get 10% off your order. And by the way, if you use the code Joey and Josh 5 off your first order, you'll get £5 off that entire order if you spend $14.99 or more. Big thanks to Holy for supporting the channel. Now let's get back to the episode. Because as the pregnancy progressed, Taylor starts to show a bit of a bump, and she even had some of Wade's friends feel a little kick from inside her tummy coming from that baby. But while friends and family might be feeling the kick of a baby and feeling Taylor's stomach, Wade wasn't feeling a lot of love on his side at all. In fact, Taylor had very much withdrawn from the relationship. She wasn't very comfortable sharing a bed with Wade or being seen in, a state of undress with Wade. In fact, she didn't really want to have any physical intimacy with him in any way. Now, that can totally be part of a pregnancy. I can totally understand some mothers not wanting to be, groped or whatever for being part of a relationship. But this felt very, very different to Wade.
Yeah, and also during her other pregnancy, she hadn't minded getting intimate with Wade, had she?
What do you mean?
Well, this is another one of the things that Netflix failed to tell anyone, but can easily be accessed by looking at the files from when they were in court, because Wade already admitted this in court. And that was the fact that she had been pregnant when they first got together. Do you know about this at all?
So, how?
The main reason for how or answer for that is that she wasn't. But when she met Wade, she told Wade that she was pregnant with twins. And it really, really baffled me. upon the Netflix documentary to hear of this exclusion. Why would the Netflix documentary not tell you that Taylor Parker had a history for lying about pregnancies? And as I say, this was something that occurred very early on during her and Wade's relationship, and it was a pregnancy that ultimately she did explain away to him. It hadn't been a successful one, but it's a key bit of context there that Netflix failed to tell anyone about.
Now, that wasn't the only weird thing that was happening around the time of the pregnancy. In fact, there were several other occurrences that not only confused Wade, but confused Wade's friends and family a lot more as well. Neighbours saw Taylor throughout the pregnancy, and they noticed one day that she would look 9 months pregnant, and the next she looked like she wasn't carrying a kid at all. And she had days of welcoming the touch of her baby bump, and then others where she didn't even want to be near other people. And then there was the really obvious stuff, because Taylor shows a mate at the gender reveal a report that confirms the little one she was expecting is a girl. The thing is that upon closer inspection, this report was from 2016, years before that gender reveal event. Taylor explains this away as being like a misprint, but it's immediately obvious that she's lying. Taylor also sends a confirmation letter to another mate called Angela saying that she's pregnant, but that letter was addressed to the same nurse in which signed the letter. So it was the nurse's kid and not Taylor's. Angela also then took her to get some over-the-counter pregnancy tests, and guess what? She is shown to not actually be pregnant. And then comes the bombshell, because Taylor couldn't have any kids. And the reason for that is because years earlier, she had a hysterectomy. The reason for this is because after giving birth to her son and second child, she was diagnosed with preeclampsia, which can ultimately lead to the death of mother and baby if untreated. She decided after that pregnancy that she didn't want to have any more kids and was given a medical and permanent sterilization. Now, I don't know if you know this, Joey, but soon after that sterilization, the process was found to not actually be that permanent at all, because Taylor actually did get pregnant even after that medical procedure. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
So this was the case. It was mentioned in the documentary, but not really called out. Basically, the doctors found her at the clinic, the ones that were speaking in the documentary, the bald guy. He basically said, we were looking after Taylor and she'd had an ectopic pregnancy. This happened after the sterilization. And what, again, if you don't know what an ectopic pregnancy is, effectively the baby is not fertilized within the womb itself, but within the tubes.
It grows outside the tube.
Exactly. Yeah. Connecting the tubes from the ovary to the womb. And that is what happened with her. Now, this can be incredibly dangerous for women. And in fact, a lot of women have passed away, unfortunately, because of this, right? So this is something you go into surgery for immediately. And not only do you go into surgery for it, you are immediately operated on, and you don't really get, let's say, a say on what happens next per se, right? Because basically what happens is she goes into the operating theatre. She's under general anesthetic. They realize that it is an ectopic pregnancy, and she's also got some other issues around her womb and that sort of thing. And they decide and they feel that they need to make immediate action. So what they do is they speak to Taylor's mother straight away, and they say, look, this is serious. We're going to need to completely remove her womb. We're going to need to do the hysterectomy. We're going to need to also remove one of her ovaries as well, by the way. And we need your permission, because she's under general anesthetic. She can't consent to this, but we need to operate her and we need to do this right now. Taylor's mother allows them to do that. And then when Taylor wakes up, she's fuming. She's absolutely sick of her mother, and she does not consent to that surgery.
Well, I mean, you would be. If you were unconscious and you woke up and something that you potentially, again, this is potential, you potentially didn't know was a possibility has happened and it's irreversible, then you would be within your right mind to be furious.
You would be. But if your mother is given a situation in which she goes, she's going to pass away unless you give her this medical procedure immediately, I think you would understand your own mother wanting you to stay alive and want to be on this planet rather than the other outcome from this. So while I can understand being angry, I totally understand that, having a go at your mum and then disowning her as a result of that would not be fair, in my opinion.
And from a parenting perspective, I think that in that situation, the first thing I would want to do is hold up a a mirror in front of that person and say, have a look at yourself. Take it in. And once you look at yourself long enough, you'll remember you got 2 fucking other kids on planet Earth that you've not done so much as keep an eye out for, yet you are heartbroken because you can't welcome another child into the world that you're probably not going to give a fuck about once again. Because ultimately, as soon as that child starts getting any attention from anyone, you're going to end up resenting it anyway because it's taking it off of you, the massive attention seeker who wants the world to revolve around her.
Now, all of this has happened outside of Wade's friends and families. In fact, by this point, they didn't really know anything about the clinic. They didn't know about any of these surgeries. But with everything that I've just said, all of the suspicion building and building and building, Wade's friends and family start to make their own research, their own inquiries, and they actually contact the clinic that had performed the procedure on Taylor. And there, the clinic isn't able to say anything, but they do allude to the fact that their suspicions are right and that Taylor can't get pregnant. So the friends and family tell Wade, and as a result, he falls out with a very good mate of his. And I don't know at this time whether he fully comprehended it or wanted to believe it. And so we're led to believe in the documentary that he sort of goes blissfully unaware at this point. But it blows up very soon after that because he has a huge argument with Taylor, basically calling out the fact that she isn't actually pregnant. And as a result, Taylor goes absolutely mad and threatens Wade. And now we're 10 months into Taylor's pregnancy. She's still saying to everyone that she is indeed pregnant, but people know that she isn't. But she keeps up this ruse. She keeps saying that she is.
Now, once the due date passes, many people's questions and doubts start to intensify. And this is when people really stop hiding the fact so much that they don't really believe Taylor's story. And you spoke a little bit about some cars earlier on, Josh. Well, one of these cars that she had actually bought and had sat on the drive at the family home was one that eventually ended up getting taken away. Taylor told them that they were taking it to fix it, but when the family ended up contacting, it had never even been purchased, that car. And off the back of that, that's when they really start to tread the path and start to investigate down the line that could suggest that Taylor's just made all of what she's told them up. And by doing so, that's when they reconnect with a few of her old friends. And once they start connecting with those old friends, they find out details that would shock, but maybe not surprise them. And those details actually end up coming from an ex of Taylor's who explicitly says to the brother of Wade that Taylor can't have kids. She's had a hysterectomy. And therefore Taylor realizes she can't keep the act up any longer. She's going to need to have a baby and she's not pregnant. So what does she do? She doesn't come clean. She tells them that on October the 5th, she's going to be booked in to have the baby. And when October the 5th rolls around, there's a problem. She's not ready to be induced. Not because she doesn't have a baby there. This time she's not ready because the house is on fire, Josh. How annoying is that?
Yeah,
right? When
it's a bit annoying. 10 months pregnant and the house is on fire kind of ruins.
You have it all the time, didn't you? Any stressful appointment, house is on fire.
Yeah, it just happens. It's very weird.
It's on fire again. I can't help it. Who do you think set Taylor's house on fire?
If I were to guess, probably Taylor.
I would say Taylor too. Good guess. That it was Taylor. It was Taylor that set the house on fire. However, despite doing a little bit of damage that needs a little bit of work on, Wade's able to put out the fire, able to do it in enough time that she will be able to get to the hospital in plenty of time. But there's another problem. Josh, do you know what this is?
Go on.
Hospital's closed, mate. You know why?
I've heard that there was a serious incident at a hospital.
There was a serious incident, one that you have to call in a threat for, one that sometimes they'll close off the building and send in tiny little robots to check for. Do you know about this?
It's all very strange timing, Joey.
It's very convenient timing, coincidental timing, some would say.
By the way, you know she was never actually charged with arson or calling in that bomb threat by the police.
Yeah. I mean, she could have used the burner phone that it was proven that she did have, and therefore it could have come from that. Or there could be another lunatic on the loose who is setting fire to houses and calling in you know what threats. So then the next day, Taylor's trying to buy some time. She's thinking up, what excuse can I come up with next? So to buy time, she tells Wade that she's traveling to Idabel, Oklahoma to give birth instead. And she does go to Idabel, but more concerningly is what she does once she gets there. She starts watching videos on how to deliver a baby via C-section, basically, how to care for newborn infants. And once she activated the burner phone that I previously spoke about, it was quite clear that she was already planning something very sinister, something that she didn't want to have tracked back to her. And it's now that this fucking evil woman uses that burner phone to send Reagan a text to let her know that she will be popping by and therefore Reagan can expect her. Why would anything be untoward when her good friend is coming over to see her that morning? Reagan was 35 weeks pregnant at home with her young daughter. And although Taylor Parker's never actually admitted what happened in that moment, this is what police believe to have happened. They believe that Taylor Parker entered the address and launched the attack almost immediately. And brace yourself, because the details are gruesome. Reagan sustained 39 blunt force injuries and 119 sharp force injuries. Taylor cut Reagan's unborn child from her stomach. Reagan fought back and was allegedly hit over the head with a glass jar at the time. And potentially most heartbreaking of all of this for me is the fact that Reagan's young daughter would have been old enough to understand that something not right was happening. It was said that Reagan's young daughter actually witnessed some of the attack before hiding under a bedsheet in her room, where she cowered for almost an hour, waiting for someone to come and put an end to the misery. As well as the baby girl, Taylor Parker took both the placenta and the umbilical cord, which is just horrific. If it gives you the slightest bit of comfort, I've actually looked into it, and experts have said that Reagan would have been unconscious or potentially even deceased by the point that Taylor Parker started attempting the cesarean. Taylor Parker flees the scene, and Reagan's family start to become a lot more worried once they can't get hold of the young mother. Her husband Homer ends up becoming really worried because he's not getting any response from her, and that's when he tells Reagan's mum to head over to the house. She does, and what she finds is honestly just as heartbreaking as it is disturbing. One of the worst crime scenes that I think we've ever covered on this channel in any case that we've spoken about, and one as a parent I genuinely don't know how I would ever come to terms with or get over if I was in that position. She finds Reagan face down on the floor in her house in a crime scene so shocking that it would disturb even the most seasoned of police officers. Now, at the exact same time, Taylor Parker has been pulled over by police officers. She's been blue lighted after driving erratically, where she's said to have been racking up the speed and driving across multiple lanes. And once a police officer pulls her over, he too would be shocked at what he saw. Taylor Parker is at the wheel of her car with an unresponsive infant in her lap. She has an umbilical cord. There's a placenta there. The scene is graphic, and she is understandably very worked up. Meaning, of course, they get her straight to the hospital. The doctors and the nurses start to work on them straight away, but despite their best efforts, there's no saving baby Braxlynn Sage Hancock. This psycho had just taken 2 lives, as well as ending multiple more, ruining people's lives that would stay with us. And why? Because she didn't want to admit that her sick lie had gotten out of control. And now, once she's got to the hospital, Taylor Parker has been examined by doctors, and they have firmly told the police officers that this woman has not just had a baby. So obviously, the investigators want to know exactly what has happened. They arrest her, they take her to the station, and that's where finally she tells them what she believes they will believe. She tells the officers that she didn't kill Reagan, but she does admit to having an argument with Reagan. She admits to being at the house, and she says that Reagan was getting herself worked up. And as she did so, she walked over to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. She doesn't know what happened next, but what she knows is that without any involvement from herself, Reagan has basically impaled herself. And once that happens, Reagan then tells Taylor to please save the baby. And once she does that, Taylor claims that the baby itself actually just falls out, completely ignoring the evidence that a C-section was attempted on that woman. So Josh, why don't you tell me what the police made of these events?
What's clear, and you see this from the body cam footage, is that the police knew immediately that something wasn't quite right with Taylor's story. And speaking of footage, the footage from inside Reagan's house is one of the most shocking and horrifying bits of footage that anyone can see. And I'm very glad in the Netflix documentary that they don't pan and have a look at the scene, because I can imagine how awful that would have been just from the descriptions of Reagan's family. But the thing is that Taylor did see that footage and did see photographs of the scene, let alone actually being there, by the way. But the police actually bring out a photo and use that in the interrogation against Taylor. They show her what she has supposedly done to Reagan, and they say, how can you live with yourself? How can you allow that happen? And to stop pulling the wool over the police's eyes. And for a long time, Taylor still continues, as Joey says, to play this off as an accident, even when looking at this photo. But what you know, looking into her eyes during this interrogation, is that she knows she's in big trouble and there's no way to lie your way out of this. And police do continue to interview her for a long period of time and try and keep her talking, even when it's very clear that she doesn't want to keep talking, because she knows that she's incriminating herself when she does. And the first interview, after hours of speaking to her, is concluded. And then there's a second interview, a few more hours of interrogation. Now, by the end of this second interview, Taylor breaks down and she admits something horrific. She said that she wanted a baby and that she's been wanting a newborn for months. And police had all of her search data, which backs this up. And let me tell you, it was absolutely sickening. She was searching up the most insane searches, like how to do a C-section. And while some of the physical evidence at the scene was so shocking that, to be honest, I don't even think I can talk about it, let me say this: it was so damning and so gruesome that she was clearly guilty, and everyone knew that. Which meant when the trial started on the 12th of September 2022, there was only ever going to be one outcome. And that's because the prosecution argued that Parker's actions were cold, calculated, and driven by her desire to keep her boyfriend, Wade Griffin. They went through all of the evidence that we've detailed on this episode. And by October the 3rd, 2022, after just an hour of deliberation, the jury found Taylor Parker guilty of capital murder and of kidnapping. And then what they have to do is go to the next phase of the trial, which is the sentencing. And remember, in Texas, there is the death penalty. And so the prosecution were very much arguing that that should be the outcome of this case. And on November 9th, 2022, after deliberating for about 90 minutes, the jury sentenced Taylor Parker to death. And during some of the victim statements, Reagan's mother, Jessica Brooks, looks directly at Taylor and calls her an evil piece of flesh demon, reminding Parker that her daughter had died fighting for her baby. And then the judge, John Tidwell, actually sentenced her to go to death row. And that's pretty much where she's been ever since that point. So I presume, Joe, you want to know what the latest is around the case and what's actually going on since she was sent down to death row.
I would be very intrigued to know, because I have read one or two headlines in the interim where it's alleged that Taylor Parker's hardly keeping a low profile in prison at this point.
So, since she was sent down to death row, Parker's legal team have filed numerous appeals, but her options are quickly running out. And that's because she's received several failed appeals. Basically, Parker's attorney appealed the conviction, arguing that she did not receive a fair trial due to the intense media coverage. Her lawyers claim that prosecutors manipulated the jury by saying that she was fat, detailing her weight loss surgery, presenting evidence of her extramarital affairs and sex life, all to trivialize her character. Now, Joey, if I was in that jury, I don't think saying that she was made fun of because of how fat she was would have necessarily changed my outcome of the case, that we've seen all of this awful, gruesome and horrific evidence against her.
It's completely irrelevant, isn't
Completely
it?
irrelevant.
It's completely irrelevant. I'm sure that the person she killed once had a time in her life where people made fun of her. She didn't go and kill anyone. Do you know what I mean? I just think it's laughable that they've even mentioned that as a possibility to explain some of her actions.
So then, I agree, by the way, it goes to the Texas Court of Appeals. That's the next level above that. And again, she didn't get any success in that appeal at all. Then her defense team tried to take that to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the long story short of that is that the Supreme Court didn't even want to hear the case. They didn't even say that it had grounds to be an appeal. So the Supreme Court have therefore said that she doesn't have the ability to appeal that thing. So what that means is she's very much still on death row, and the death penalty sentence is very much still going ahead. So now she's in a unit in Gatesville, Texas, I think it's in. So she's still in prison basically, and she's awaiting pretty much being sentenced to death. But you actually know a little bit more about her time in prison. I don't know too much about this. It definitely wasn't described in the documentary, I think, because it was actually filmed and edited before she was even in prison at this time. So they gave us a bit at the end, but come on, tell me a bit more about what's going on.
So she was being held in Bowie County, which is a prison that I only really know because I watch a lot of the shows 60 Days In. Do you know 60 Days In?
Yes, classic show.
60 Days In, people go undercover in prison. They're in there for 60 days, hence the title. And Bowie County was one of the female facilities that they did. It was quite a rough prison. It was definitely a prison where you would say that prisoners were in control of the pods. They had things like pod bosses, which is one prisoner that would be running the whole thing. And Netflix did in fact have the opportunity to potentially go to this prison and to speak to Taylor Parker.
Really?
And this was something that probably would have surprised you here, especially bearing in mind that we recently covered the other Netflix documentary, the case of Mackenzie Shriller and the two young men that she murdered, right? And they went to the jail and they interviewed Mackenzie. So we were almost led to believe, without them actually guiding us down that path, just in terms of putting two and two together, that they had probably tried to interview Taylor Parker and Taylor Parker's team had denied the request or something like that. That's wrong. Taylor Parker, if her actions are anything to go by, probably would have been up for doing the Netflix documentary. And it was the actual creator of that documentary, someone that works with Netflix, who decided that it would be massively insensitive to have Taylor Parker on there. And that's due to the fact that in a couple of her interviews that she has given since, that's exactly what she's been. Massively insensitive. She called her callous, sick, twisted crime a mistake and said that because of one mistake that I had made, prison guards were treating her differently. Clearly, this is not a woman, in my opinion, that has grasped the reality and therefore has the remorse that I would deem significant enough for the crime that she committed.
This is the thing, like we've debated this on the show before about whether you should give airtime to killers, because ultimately they kind of, a lot of the times, enjoy that sort of press attention. They enjoy the publicity. They enjoy the sort of the speculation about them and why they did those crimes. And they very much lean into this. Do you know a show that I thought did this really well? I don't think you've ever watched it. It's Mindhunter.
Right.
Like they talk about these killers and they very much enjoyed, this was back in the 70s and 80s. They enjoyed being on cassette tape at that time about, doing audio interviews of their crimes, and they got a kick out of it, lots of those killers. And I think she's one of those people that probably would also get a kick out of it, because what we've told from the documentary, you saw this very clearly. She really enjoyed the attention. She wanted that for various different people. And so I think she would very much enjoy that. And therefore, when you initially said that, I was thinking, I would have I thought it would be quite interesting to have her speak about this case and to know her perspective on it. I'm actually really glad they didn't.
I thought that it was the perfect way to almost show homage to the victims, obviously, but the perfect way just in general to show that bad behavior doesn't get good treatment. Do you know what I mean? Because this would have made that woman's day to come out of her cell, to have gone through makeup and to have done stuff like that. And ultimately she was denied the opportunity to further discredit any of her victims, which I'm sure she would have tried to do. Now, when we speak about some of the violations that she's been able to rack up in prison, that's probably why I have the feeling that she would have liked to have come out of her cell and to got some makeup on and got on camera, because one of the violations is modifying her clothing. And this basically comes into also wearing makeup inside of the prison, modifying the clothing so that it could show more cleavage has been an accusation that's been thrown at Taylor Parker. An accusation is that she has very much so been getting romantic and hot and heavy in prison, because she has been warned on multiple occasions about prison relationships. And one more thing that you may not know, considering that this woman's on death row, what's the most famous thing about death row? What do you get on death row?
Death row meals.
Death row meals. Gone.
Oh, as in the whole thing is gone, or she's not having one?
Taylor Parker's not having one.
Okay.
No,
why not?
Meal for
Why not?
Taylor Parker. No, she's just not allowed one. I don't know. I don't know whether it's to do with changes in the law, but it's something that she has shown her displeasure over. I mean, I wouldn't really be showing it, because you get that meal the night before you get put down. So you'd think that she would be happy about it. And do you know what as well? I was actually reading into death row in America last night. There's no guarantee that she ends up meeting her fate. You know that?
And why is that?
Just if you look at the numbers and statistics, there's a lot of people on death row
waiting,
probably more heavy pound for pound in favour of the female percentage of those that are on death row that are awaiting execution. A lot of these ones go on for years and years and years, and there are a lot of legality ways that you can basically long out your time on death row. And by doing that, I don't think as planet Earth, we're going in the direction of getting closer back towards a death row. I feel that we're getting further away from it. Hence the reason why I believe that if you long out your time on death row enough, it's guaranteed probably that you're not actually going to meet your fate on.
Yeah, an interesting fact that I heard about the case is she's actually the youngest woman on death row.
Youngest out of 7, I believe.
Yeah. So again, that's fascinating, really, that this young woman would do it. I mean, look, the defense, another thing that I found out that wasn't clearly said on the documentary as well, is that the defense tried to argue again, Joey, this defense that she'd had a mental inability to stand trial and that she couldn't actually knowingly be aware of what the crimes were. They use this thing called frontal lobe syndrome, which basically is sort of like inability to control one's, I don't know, ability to make rational decisions, that sort of thing. And again, I'm sure people laughed them out of court for even suggesting this. I think it's absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah, I just think that, as we know from looking into multiple different court cases every single month, there's always something that the defense are going to come up with. And more often than not, it will always sort of sound pretty idiotic.
And by the way, right, there's no argument to say that this wasn't premeditated. There are internet searches going through exactly what she did at various different points of her crimes being committed. So she was very clearly aware of what she was doing. She knew exactly what her plan was going to be. So again, you can argue that it's frontal lobe syndrome as much as you want. There's premeditation, and the murder itself should stand. That's as simple as it is for me.
Yeah, not only that, quite a lot came out from ex-relationships, ex-friendships and stuff like that. And there was also an ex-partner of Taylor Parker's that testified that she had done very similar things with himself. And although slightly different, she had used her health or a potential child's health to dictate how the relationship went. He actually said that when he was trying to leave her, she would always come up with some sort of medical reason as to why she wasn't in a fit state to be able to be left left.
Now, before we end her time in jail, I also do want to tell you guys about a fact that I couldn't believe. She tried to frame a mentally fragile inmate, and her name was called Hannah Hollander. And really what happened here is that she tried to force this inmate to write a confession for the murder of Reagan. Even though it's quite clear and obvious that the evidence was against Taylor, she tried to use this inmate. I think it's disgusting.
Yeah, and if she's got to that point where she's trying to frame her for the murder, God knows what else she's done with that inmate.
And what we must say before we finish is that our thoughts and prayers must go out to Homer, the widower that has been left without the love of his life, pretty much. And we saw in the documentary the absolutely devastating scene where he has to look at the coffin of Reagan at the funeral and he breaks down. And oh my God, I can't imagine how awful it is for him. Now, something that I couldn't also believe is that he's actually sued Wade for an element of the crime. Basically, he said that Wade should have prevented Taylor from driving his vehicle because she was basically unable to drive, or shouldn't have been able to drive. She wasn't of competence to be able to do it. And that's actually going through the civil law case at the moment. So that's still ongoing, but effectively he could get compensation via a civil lawsuit from this case.
And that's something that I always found really weird while watching the documentary, was the fact that this woman, heavily pregnant, is driving her car. I mean, anyone that's had a missus pregnant will know the first thing you do is say, don't be driving your car as soon as it starts poking out to that extent and whatnot. And obviously the willingness of both herself to be driving, but also her family members or her boyfriend to let her drive when she's in that sort of state was something that I did question.
Yeah, and to be fair, ultimately, I think we are still going to get more answers from this case. I definitely don't think it's over yet. And obviously, if you do want us to do a part 2, as and when we get some more information, we absolutely will do. Just let us know in the comments if you want that.
So we hope you guys enjoyed today's video. It's one that has been requested to us time in, time out since the Netflix documentary dropped. And most of those requests have come in to us from our members. If you guys want to become a member of the channel and be able to put your own blueprint on this channel and dictate some of the cases that we cover, then you can do so by becoming a member. The link is in the description right now. You can hit it and pay less than the price of a cup of coffee in London to become a member of this channel. And if you liked today's video, especially in terms of telling you what Netflix left out, then you should watch this video on screen right now, where we cover the other Netflix documentary, The Crash, which details the story of Mackenzie Sharilla. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of another video. We will see you all in the next one.